Hello, hi Paul, how are you?
Hi, Nizam. I'm well. How are you today?
I'm good, and thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity to interview you.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. I always like talking about hypnosis. It's so much fun. So thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you. So, friends, let me introduce you. Paul Ramsay blends education and entertainment in a way few can, with a background in English education and student development. Paul began his career as a teacher and residence hall director. And long story short, okay, he has toured the US as a stage hypnotist, performing primarily for college audiences, a seven-time NACA regional showcase artist. Paul brings both showmanship and substance to the stage crafting experiences that are interactive, inspiring, and joy-filled. So he is also the innovator of Mind Games, the first interactive stage hypnosis show. So these are the beautiful things he has done, and we are very fortunate that he is here. And uh, Paul, let us hear more about Paul from his words only. So, Paul, please tell me, how did hypnosis happen to you?
So all of the it's all in that bio, but of course we try to make bios that are not too long, right? So I'll go back to what you shared with the bio. I was running a dormitory at the University of New Hampshire. Before that I had been an English teacher. So my formal education was in English teaching. I didn't last in that job very long. I got kind of burned out, but I still wanted to work with people. I wanted to be of service. And so I went back to my alma mater and I took a job running a dormitory, what they now call residence halls. They don't call them dormitories anymore, but most mainstream people don't know that. So I ran this residence hall, had 163 students in it, men and women. And I enjoyed that job very much. It let me really work with people every day in a way that I felt I was being of service and was helping young people have a better university experience. Part of that job was to put on social and educational programming in the residence hall for the benefit of the students who lived there. And
Okay.
one of the things that I would do is every year I would invite a retired hypnotist to come into my building and do a
Okay.
live demonstration. He wouldn't do a show, he would do a demonstration, and he was wonderful. His name was Bob Chase. He's not with us anymore, but he would do about 2 hours, and he would basically do almost like what most of us in hypnotism would think of as a pre-talk. He would sort of stretch that and make it his presentation because he would do some of the stuff we talk about in pre-talk, and then he'd do a little live demo, and then he'd do more of what we and he'd do more live demo. And he was very smart. He would use the interesting nature of the live demonstration to keep the young people's attention, but then keep coming back to, I want you to understand this is fun, but it's also very serious, and it can help make your life better. And he would do that really, really wonderfully. So he had never done shows. He had some stage hypnotism skills, but he had never done shows. He had only ever done clinical work for 18 years in my
Wow.
home state of New Hampshire and just seen clients. But he knew the power of using those stage like skills to get people's attention and to hold their attention and then leverage that to get them to think about using hypnosis to make their lives better. And so I brought him every year. I did that job for 5 years, and I brought him in every year. And every year he would come early. We would sit in the room and talk, and the students would filter in. He'd do his thing, and then the students would leave, and he'd stay for a while, and we'd talk more. And it was a really enjoyable experience. And the third year that I brought him in, he was telling me about an interesting client that he had had and how he helped this client. And when he finished his story, I said, "Man, that is so great. I would love to learn how to do that." And
Okay.
without any thought, he said, "Well, I'll teach you." And I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah." He said, Paul, I just have this feeling I think you'd be good at it." And
Okay.
that was, and I think that's always, I love to tell that story because I think it's a fun story. People always ask me how I got into the business. But more importantly, that one little part of a simple moment of encouragement, that idea that he just said to me with total confidence and alignment, I think you would be good at it. And I was like,
Wow.
okay. And I started meeting with him, and he taught me all the basics. And he got me to the point where he said, okay, you can start practicing, no, just hypnotizing people. And here I was, I had this building with 160 young people who were fascinated, right? So I emailed the whole building and I said, if you want to know what it's like to be hypnotized, come on down. And it was every day. I mean, it was like I should have put a revolving door in my apartment, like they were like, I had such a stressful day. Can I do it? And I'd be like, yep, get on the couch. And I wouldn't do any suggestions. I would just hypnotize them, talk to them for like a couple of minutes about just noticing how they feel. That's it. And then take them out. And I did that for a few weeks. And then I said to him, and he goes, okay. He said, and then we just kept working at it. And I realized very quickly that this was a wonderful opportunity for me. I thought when I said I would learn it, I thought maybe it would be a hobby that I would sort of do on the side. And as soon as I started actually doing it with people, I was like, oh no, this isn't a hobby. This is the thing. This is it. And so, yeah, so then I left that job and I started my career. That was 2004. And 21 years later, here I am.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. Paul, this is a very weird question. Ever happened to you that don't look into my eyes? Anyone said that to you?
Oh my gosh, Nizam, all the time. You know how, so like everyday people probably have, I can think of two, I want to say three, but they have like at least two jokes they make over and over and over again. And the
Okay.
first one, they're probably tied. Half the time, right away, they go, oh, you're going to make me cluck like a chicken. They love that one when they find out you're a hypnotist. Or the other one, just as often, is especially if they're with someone else. If it's just them, they'll go, oh, I'm not going to look you in the eyes. Or if they're with someone else, they'll go, oh, whatever you do, don't look in his eyes. And they think they're so funny, like they're the first person to ever make that joke. And I just, I'm like, let them have a moment of fun. Yeah.
Even now, there are these kind of misconceptions, Paul, and thanks a lot for sharing this. And now, the a bad boy image some people carry about the stage hypnotist, like, oh my God, they're controlling, they can make me do this and all that. So, what is your message to people who are, and I'm glad that these days it is called as comedy hypnosis. And please clarify for the people who think that it's about control, manipulation, and making people do something they don't want to do, and all these kind of fears people are carrying around things.
Sure. I have to be honest with you, Nizam. I don't think that's going to go away. I
Oh,
think
yes.
that we're going to deal with that for a long time because the most common way that people are having I want to say an experience, but it's not really an experience of hypnosis. But the most common way that hypnosis is presented people is through storytelling, television shows and movies.
Yeah.
And the job of a writer of a television show or a screenwriter for a movie is to tell a dramatic story. And so when they tell stories with hypnosis, it's not, I mean, you could, if you were really, really amazingly gifted and thought of things in a different way, you could tell a dramatic story of how hypnosis helps people. But it's much easier to write a spooky, mystic, nefarious story of how someone is wielding hypnosis to control people's minds and make strange things happen. And so this goes all the way back into the 1800s when Trilby, right, was written. And first as a novel, for people who aren't familiar, Trilby was a novel. It then became a play, and it was performed as a play for many years. And when it was a play, the person who was the costume designer gave the main character, a beautiful young woman named Trilby, they gave her a hat, And so some people know of the Trilby hat and they don't know the connection. The Trilby hat is still worn by people today. There's the Trilby hat, and the antagonist in Trilby was Mephisto. No, no. Oh, what was his name? I can't believe I've told this story so many times, and I can't believe it. Oh, oh, it's gonna drive me crazy. All right, I'll come back to it. If I stop trying so hard, the name will come back to me. But the bad guy in the story was a man who used hypnosis to hypnotize Trilby because he longed for her. He loved her. And when he would hypnotize her, she could sing beautifully. When she wasn't hypnotized, she couldn't carry a tune at all. And he hypnotized her, and she started touring all over Europe and making a lot of money, and people loved her. And meanwhile, she had a boyfriend, and he never got to see her anymore because the bad guy, oh, it drives me crazy. I can't remember his name. He kept taking her away and touring her around. And that story, the year it was published as a novel, please, folks, go look this up to get it right. I tend to get it wrong. It was the second most purchased novel that year, behind either Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I think it was, or some other famous novel that we would all recognize. Trilby was the second most popular novel bought that year. And because it was so popular, then it got made into a play. That did so well that eventually they made it into a movie, back when movies were black and white. And it starred John Barrymore as the bad guy that I still can't remember. um, and so, hold on, I'm going to look it up because that's going to drive me crazy. Because this is important. This is really important. Because to this day, this is I know it feels like I'm probably digressing a lot, but this goes to your question really, really well.
Yes, yes.
To this day, George du Maurier wrote Trilby, and Trilby hats still exist today. But more importantly, where is his name? Svengali. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Wikipedia. Svengali. To this day, we still use the term Svengali. It's woven into our broader culture. If you are a Svengali, you're not a nice person. You're a devious, cheating, right? And Svengali was a hypnotist. And so that, to me, is the best example of how all these years ago, people, were negatively impacted by a portrayal of hypnotism. And ever since then, it's continued and continued, TV shows, movies, over and over again. And so we have to work against that all the time. And we're probably going to have to keep working against it because it's an easy and interesting angle to take as a writer. So I think if you're in hypnotism, or you're thinking about working in the field of hypnotism, you should be prepared to be confronted by those viewpoints and stereotypes. And but here's the great thing. All we need to do that is to just love people, right? To just talk about how we have this joy for doing this thing that really, really helps people. And even if you're in stage hypnotism like me, I really think of what I do as sharing a gift with people. And you mentioned earlier, Nizam, the idea of comedy hypnosis. And most stage hypnotists today speak of themselves as comedy hypnotists. I don't do that. I'm totally cool with the others who do. I love them all, and I love that they're making people laugh. But I want to do something different. And so I don't have a label for it yet. I wouldn't call myself a joy hypnotist. But I look at the work I do as an opportunity to give people not just a comedy experience, a joyful experience. I want them to experience joy during my show. And I really think about how everything I'm building and everything I'm doing gives them a moment of joy and helps them feel more connected to one another.
That's awesome. And ever happened that there was this heart-touching feedback, like after your show, someone came and I was going through a lot of grief or pain, and I really enjoyed your show, and it was so feeling good and all that stuff. I'm sure in 21 years you would have heard a lot of stories, but something to share with our audience.
Well, and yeah, and I love that you've asked that. Is things often happen spontaneously, right? When people go into hypnosis, these wonderful things, which really I can't take credit for, right? Like I did a corporate show once for a a logistics company. They delivered things. They had trucks and they delivered things, and they did a party for all of their workers. And I had a nice show, a pretty standard show. And at the end of it, a young man came up to me and he said, I really need to ask you a question. And I said, sure. And that happens a lot. They have questions. And I said, sure, go ahead. And he said, I had a car accident over a year ago, and the car accident injured my back. And the doctors said I was going to have surgery. And so I went in and I did the surgery, but the surgery didn't help at all. In fact, I've had more pain in my back since the surgery. He said, but he was in the show, and he said, but when I went into hypnosis, all my pain went away. And he
Wow.
said, is that normal? And so I said, listen, I'm not trying to be cheeky with you, but what is normal? I said, first of all, it's not normal for people with back injuries to come into my show. So no, I said, and I don't have a lot of people who tell me that their pain spontaneously goes away when they go into hypnosis. I said, don't worry. I said, here's the important thing. Don't worry about whether that's normal or not. What matters is you had that experience. No one told you to, you just had it. So what does that mean for you now? And he sat and thought. He thought and thought. And he said, well, that's the thing. I really don't know. He's like, I don't know what to do now. And I said, maybe you don't have to do anything now.
Yeah.
Maybe now you can just understand that that pain can go away that quickly and easily if you let it. Would it be worth it to let it? And so that, like, those are rare things like that, but they're really nice when they happen. They're really, really nice. I had a young woman in my show at a university years ago who was awesome. She was amazing through the whole show. And one of the things I do in my show, I should say this before I tell the story, I do a lot of things differently in my show than a lot of my colleagues. And one of the biggest things I do differently is I don't take volunteers from the audience up onto the stage and hypnotize them on stage. I do my induction with everyone while they're all still sitting in the audience.
Okay.
And I clearly communicate to them. I tell them I'm going to do this because I want them to be informed and be able to give their consent or not. So I explain all this to them and I say, if you don't want to be hypnotized, it's really simple. Don't follow my directions. You have the will to choose, right? But if you want to do it, you can sit comfortably in your chair instead of being on stage with everyone staring at you and putting pressure on you. And you can just do it. And if it works, I know when it's working, and then I'll get you on stage. It's been wonderful. I've done it for over 15 years. It works wonderfully. And so on this night, this young woman must have been curious and chosen to, get hypnotized. She came up at the time when I said, if this is happening, then hypnosis is working for you. Come on up. And she came up. And then I proceeded with the whole show. And at the end of the show, what I do is I wipe their memories, because I found that a fair amount, about 1/3 of the people in my show at the end of the show every night would think that they didn't get hypnotized. And I'd have to explain and kind of argue, not in a mean way, but kind of argue with them. Excuse me. And so what I started doing was I was like, all right, I'm just going to build a thing in where they can't have that happen. So I wipe their memory. I tell them they won't remember anything. They will really believe that they didn't get hypnotized. And then I use that as a brief moment of entertainment. I let them kind of get mad at me and yell at me. And then what I do is I send them back to the audience. And back then, what I used to do was when they would walk down the stage and they got to the bottom of the stairs and their foot touched the floor at the bottom of the stairs, they would remember everything. And
Wow.
then there was no way they could tell me they didn't get hypnotized. And the audience, they'd be going closer to the audience, and the audience would get to see the realization come over their face, and they really enjoyed that, and it was a lot of fun. So I set all that up, and I woke them up. I emerged them, and as soon as I emerged them, this young woman looked and was kind of like, "What's going on?" And her whole body language changed, and she got kind of tense, and she very quickly got so nervous that she turned in her chair so that she was facing the back of the theater. She had her back to the audience. She was about in the middle of my row of guests. And normally, what I would do is I would work from where I was one by one all the way to the end. But I didn't like the idea that she was getting stressed. And so I skipped everybody between me and her, and I went right to her. And I said, "Hey, I noticed that you seem a little confused or something. What's going on?" And she was turned, so no one could see and I had to put the mic down, and I didn't get it down quick enough. She said, "Why am I here?" And so I had to repeat. I go, "Why are you here? You were in a hypnosis show." And then I got the microphone down, and she goes, "No, no, I would never do that." And I said, "Well, you did do that. You've been up here for an hour. You've been amazing. You were a great hypnotic subject." And and she goes, "No, I would never be in a hypnosis show. I have terrible, terrible stage fright."
Oh, wow.
Right? And so I thought, "Oh, how great is this? We can change that." And so all
Yes.
I did was I said, because the suggestion's there already, right? She's going to be faced with the realization that she was one of the stars of the show for an hour. I said, "Okay, listen to me carefully. I'm going to let you go. I don't want you to be uncomfortable up here. So I'm going to let you go right now. But I want you to really pay attention to the way you feel when your footstep touches the floor at the bottom of the stairs. You're going to realize you were up here and you were never afraid, and you don't ever have to be afraid on stage again for the rest of your life. Now you go ahead, go back and see your friends." And she stood up and she hustled. She made a beeline for the stairs and went down the stairs. And when she got down to the stairs and her footstep touched the floor, you would have thought she got struck by lightning. She went like that. And then she turned and she looked at me, and you could just see her. She was remembering, and she smiled. And the crowd saw it too, and they loved it so much they gave her a standing ovation. They stood up and they turned and they were clapping for her. And so again, I think, I understand that some people in my profession are doing things that aren't always kind to people and that make us look bad sometimes. I understand that that happens, but I think it's all what you choose to put your attention to. I think we also have people out there like me and like some of my friends that I know work in the business who are out there working really hard to use hypnosis not just as entertainment, but entertainment that gets people to consider using hypnosis to make their life better, and showing people through these moments that they can make their life better with hypnosis. And I'm very proud to be a stage hypnotist. I'm very proud of that.
And now I know why you don't prefer to call it as comedy hypnosis, because it's much more than that. Thanks for
Yeah,
that, Paul. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And Paul, uh, now let us shift to hypnotherapists. Like there are no, no, no. I am not a stage hypnotist. I just do clinical hypnosis part and all that. The stress that they are carrying, and even in their training they are taught that never ever sir, clarify that misconceptions and all that stuff. So having stage hypnosis skills, it's a skill anywhere. So how would that skill help in the therapeutic work as well, Paul?
That's a great question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is speed.
Mm.
When you're a stage hypnotist, when you're an entertainment hypnotist, your job is to be entertaining. And so you really don't have the luxury of being able to take your time with your process. You need to get to the fun stuff as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
And so what that does, and again, there's everything. I should have said this at the beginning. When I talk about hypnotism, in my mind, everything's on a bell curve, right? So when I say things, I'm saying like what I think is usually what's in the middle of the bell curve most of the time. But it's important to recognize there's outliers on each end, right? So everything I say, it's not like it's an absolutism, but okay. So in general, you need to get going. You need to get to the fun stuff. And so that means you have to work on developing quick skills,
Mm.
right? And so you can't, now again, there are people who do this, but I think you can't afford to sit there and do a 20-minute progressive relaxation induction while the people who aren't getting hypnotized are just sitting there kind of going, God, get on with it. Get on with, like you've got to work, you've got to work, you've got to work. And so there can be that if you have that skill set of I can hypnotize people quickly and effectively, there could be times where that's very beneficial to a client. And I think that for me, my hypnotism improved greatly when I started incorporating a true understanding of fractionation.
Okay.
Okay. I think a lot of hypnotists, I've run into a lot of stage hypnotists, a lot, who when I talk about this, they don't even know what fractionation is. It's
Oh.
it's lacking in a lot of the stage hypnotism training. I even run into clinical people who kinda have heard of it, but they don't know what it really is. And I run into people who they know what it is, but they don't really know how to use it effectively. And to me, that was a game changer. Like when I started rebuilding my show. Not so what happens in stage hypnotism, there's a real focus on, well, what induction do you do? What induction do you do? And I think clinical folks do this too. We all hope that we're going to find a magical induction that works so well that it just gets our people where we need them to be, and then we can have major, major success with them because of the induction. And when I realized that's just the wrong way of thinking about it, do the induction that you feel good and confident doing because you'll do it better, and then have a process in which you fractionate your client or your people on stage over and over and over again, right? And it's so strange to me is this goes back to the 1800s. The guys at the Nancy School were from what I've read, the first ones to figure this out, right? Bernheim and can't think of the other one, but they knew this almost 2 centuries ago now, and we still have hypnotists who don't value fractionation. And again, I've seen other people in online forums just say they don't think it's important. Well, if you know what it is and you don't think it's important, that's fine. You're making an informed choice about how to do your work. Okay, I'm not going to argue with you, but I believe it's very important and very effective. And so again, when you have those things, like, so for me, I learned as an entertainment hypnotist how to fractionate and fractionate and fractionate and fractionate. And so I did see clients for 15 years, and then I just finally stopped because I just was like, I just have more fun doing the shows.
Okay.
So if I went back to seeing clients, I would bring that from stage hypnotism to my client work, right? I would fractionate and fractionate and fractionate. I would do that because I've seen what a difference it makes in the way people get absorbed into hypnosis. There are other things like that. That's the best example I can give you, Nizam. But I think that when you're working on trying to really do your stage work you're mostly thinking about, I don't have a lot of time, I need to be quick. Well,
Yes.
you don't have all day when you're a clinical hypnotist either. You have someone else on the schedule, right?
Yes.
Someone else is on the calendar, and they're going to come in. You don't have to be super quick, but you need to be efficient. Let's use that
Yes.
word instead. I think there's an efficiency factor for people who use stage like skills. I think there's a creativity in being a stage hypnotist that maybe isn't there as much in clinical people,
Hmm.
because again, that we're pushing ourselves to think creatively every day, to come up with new things that will give a great experience to our, it's just part of our subculture. And so I think that lends itself potentially to being a more effective clinician, is really working on what's a new and different approach. How can I think outside the box? How can I do something special just for this client? I think there's the skills there. The biggest thing of all is confidence.
Hmm.
Within the first 2 years, again, 21 years ago, I started right away doing shows and seeing clients. My confidence overwhelmingly came from doing shows. I was doing
Yes.
live demos and shows all the time. And so I just didn't worry. When I met with clients, I didn't worry about, oh, what happens? And I was like, no, this is going to work. And of course, it didn't always work. But if it didn't work, I didn't get upset about it. I was like, yeah, we'll just keep going. There's something about, if you're going to be effective as an entertainment hypnotist, you really have to just kind of learn to not care about failing. I have other areas in my life I hate failing. I hate it so much, Nizam. I get really angry and stressed about it, but not in that compartment of my life. It's so interesting. Like, somehow I made my peace with it in stage hypnotism. I'm like, you're going to do it and it's going to not work more often than it works. And you
Wow.
just keep going until it works. Like,
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for that amazing message. Because even personally, I have heard from a lot of people that their confidence skyrocketed once they got understanding and the training of stage skills. Many
yeah.
people have told that, and you have confirmed it because you come from both the backgrounds where you worked with the clients and you did the stage shows. Amazing. That's awesome. And Paul, now comes the training part. So as like okay, before training part, I'm just curious to ask you. Let's imagine this is your day one. You have all the knowledge, but not the experience of the stage show or anything with the hypnosis. So if you have to restart the same journey again, are you ready to, travel that road again, Paul, of stage hypnosis and the career? Like this is your day one, but you have all the knowledge that you have, and you have to choose this as a career going forward in life. Would you restart again?
Yeah. Yeah. I would. It's so funny because, in some ways that's what I'm going through.
Right.
Um, I was diagnosed with cancer in
Oh,
2021, and I
thank
went
you.
through 2 years of treatment, and that was right after the pandemic. So I basically had 3 years where I didn't really work and do any. I couldn't. And so in that 3 years is a long time, right? And so I lost all my clients pretty much, and they had to go use other people. And
Mhm.
so and thankfully here I am, I'm healthy and I'm well, um, and I'm having to rebuild my whole business. And so I luckily I know everything I know from 21 years, but from a business perspective, I'm starting all over again. And it's been quite challenging. I think what's also happening now is there's some things happening in the economy here in the United States that are not good. And so I've talked with all of my friends in the business here, and it's very difficult to get shows in the United States right now. And that's not just for hypnotists, that's for everyone,
Hmm.
magicians, mentalists, everyone, comedians.
Hmm.
People aren't spending as much money on entertainment right now as they were previously. And so there is still work, but it's much harder to get. So I'm kind of going through that now. But if I think about it more from just the hypnosis side of things, absolutely, I would. Yeah, it's one of the coolest jobs in the world. Like there's just very few jobs that are as cool and fun as this one. You get to even again, I think it's really important, even if it's easy to think, oh, well, if you're doing the entertainment, it's just entertainment. You know, like as I've told you these stories, like even if you're doing the entertainment, you're impacting people's lives. If you're doing it well, I think you're showing them that their mind is much more incredible than perhaps they realized before. You're showing them that their mind body experience is profound, and that if and you're helping them realize, oh, I can do this. What else can I do with this? And it's a wonderful, wonderful way to be of service to other people while having an incredible amount of fun. It's just, it's the best. Yeah, I would totally do it again.
Satisfaction as well. Yeah. So, Paul, there is this personal question which was not in my mind since you have mentioned about your health aspect
Yeah.
and 3 years pandemic, losing the clients and business and all that. How did your hypnosis skills and knowledge helped you to manage your health and the business challenges, everything in your
What a
personal life?
wonderful question. That's such a great question. Is the primary way that it helped me was I did a lot of self hypnosis while I was going through treatment, um, mostly focused on gratitude. I had an understanding from early on that if I was to do well, to survive, really, I won't. This the whole story is kind of long, and we don't need to tell the whole story. But I will tell you. So when I discovered that I had cancer, I had a type of cancer called multiple myeloma. It's like leukemia. It's in the bones, in the marrow. And when they tested my bone marrow was 95% cancerous.
Oh,
And it was very serious. Yeah, I came very close to dying. Because what happened was it produces a lot of protein that you don't need, and it produces so much of it that that protein starts to clog your kidneys, and your kidneys will fail. And so that's what actually kills most people that have this kind of cancer, is they actually die of kidney failure. And so I had gotten to that point where my kidneys were starting to fail. And so I went into a hospital. I was very blessed. I had wonderful care, and they did some procedures on me, and they saved me. And so I realized that if I was to do well with the treatments, it was going to be from cultivating the energy of gratitude. And so I would do these, when they would do my chemotherapy and they'd put the needle in my arm and hang the bag, I would sit, and so many people, rightfully so, this is much like, it's almost like the way we talked about hypnotism. There have been stories about how awful chemotherapy is told for years and years. And it's portrayed in TVs and movies, right? And it's always when people are going through chemotherapy, they're so sick looking, and it's just awful. And I said to myself, we're not gonna tell that story. And so I would sit, and they'd put the needle in my arm and they'd hang the bag, and I would sit, and the whole time I would put on music, beautiful music, and I would do self hypnosis, and I would say various versions of how wonderful is it that we are so blessed to be able to receive this treatment. How lucky are we that we have all these people here who are taking care of me and who are being of service to people like me. I'm really, really lucky. I'm so grateful that I'm able to be here. And I want all of me to know I accept these chemicals. I accept this medicine going into my body. I know that it's coming into my body. I was doing hypnotherapy for myself, right? But I was always doing it through the lens of gratitude. I'm not afraid of this medicine. I'm grateful for this medicine. I'm not afraid of being in this hospital. I'm grateful to be in this hospital. And I started that before the chemotherapy, when I was my kidneys were failing and I was in the hospital, I said to myself, the day I checked in, I said, I'm going to be grateful to every single person who takes care of me here. I'm going to make sure I say, if it's the doctor who's in charge or the assistant who just brings me some ginger ale to soothe my stomach, everybody gets thanked all the time because all of them are a blessing to me and they're going to help me heal. And so that's what I did. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks and just every day, well, it was a week the first time, and every single thing that happened, I said, thank you. I really appreciate you. Thank you. I really appreciate you. I must have said it 1,000 times. And at the end of the week, the doctor came to me and he goes, I got to tell you, Paul, he goes, you're doing amazing. Because I've never seen anyone bounce back from something like this as well as you have. And I said, well, that's great. And I really appreciate you telling me that. And the same thing, I did my chemo, same thing. And then when my chemo got done, then I had to do a stem cell transplant. And I went to a hospital for 2 weeks, and that was the worst part of all of it. They gave me a chemotherapy that killed all of my bone marrow, and then they gave me my stem cells, and my stem cells grew me all new bone marrow. And that was really, really awful to go through. But still, I sat there and every day I was like, thank you, 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 like to everyone and everything. So yeah, for me it was keeping it in that energy of gratitude. And I think it was a huge, huge part. And I still I did that enough. Like it never goes away. Every day, even for things like this, Nizam, like the ability to be here, every experience I get to have, I'm like, gosh, I'm grateful for this experience. How lucky am I that I get to sit with Nizam, who's on the other side of the world, and I get to talk with him about what we love to do, and I'm still here and I still get to do it. Everything is gratitude all the time, all the time.
Thank you, Paul, for sharing it. What
Yeah.
you did to others, how it was helpful for you, and especially in this stage of life, it's not a joke to go through all that stuff and be grateful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I want to say too, I don't, I survived because of science, right? Like I
Yes,
had
yes, for
really,
sure.
yeah, like I believe deeply
Yes,
in
yes.
science, but I do also believe that the mind body experience is important and powerful. And I believe that in English, we use the phrase dovetail, which is when you're like making furniture, right? That it's a dovetailed experience to me to bring the mind body work and the science together so that the science performs better. You know, that's the way I look at it. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul, for sharing this. This was not in my things to ask, but since it happened, and
Yeah,
I'm
no,
glad.
I appreciate you asking. I'm happy to talk about it again. It's just another chance to practice gratitude for me. So thank you. I appreciate it.
You, Paul. And Paul, like, see, this question is on behalf of someone who is new to hypnosis. This is about someone who is only confined to the therapeutic part of the hypnosis. So, could you please share what kind of different trainings do you offer so that they get trained if they are interested? So, what kind of different trainings do you offer, Paul?
Oh, sure.
Including your AI, including your AI there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will tell you, it's funny. I have a website called besthypnosistraining.com, and all of my
Just
training is
hypnosis
there.
training.
Yeah, so you can go there and look at them. There are a bunch of different trainings there, but the big ones are I do stage hypnosis training and certification. I do clinical, but I haven't done it in a long time because again, that's been de-emphasized in my life.
Mm.
I think for the people that you're talking about, I have a class called demonstrational hypnotism. So because over the years I've had this kind of conversation, and I so really appreciate you having it again today, because I think it is a really great thing. Is I've had so many clinical hypnotists say, I don't want to do shows, but I
Okay.
wish I knew a little bit of what you know and that I could
Mm.
use it sometimes. And so I was like, well, I'll build a class. So I
Okay.
built a class called Demonstrational Hypnotism, and it teaches people how to take some of what we do as stage hypnotists and use it to do live demonstrations. So let's say you were invited to speak to a university class,
Yeah.
psychology class, or social work class, or let's say that there's a business meeting that you were invited to come in and talk. Here in the United States, some corporations, excuse me, will do what are called lunch and learns. They'll
Oh,
they'll have it's voluntary, and their employees will come and eat their lunch in a room, and they'll have a guest speaker, and the guest speaker will come in and talk with them about something. There are different opportunities like that where if you could go in, and it goes all back to how we started. I love how we started talking about my old mentor, Bob Chase, right? You don't have to do shows to be of service to people and to get more client work. You can go in and do what Bob did. You can do a live demonstration and talk about the value of the work you do. Not just talk about it, show it. When you show it to people, it's much more powerful. And so that's what that course is designed, is to take a few stage hypnosis techniques, rapid inductions, mostly quicker inductions, and say, if you took these and you built them into a live demonstration, and here are the ways. That class says you could have a long form demonstration, a medium, or a short. Same ideas, you just change how much you're talking about it for how much time your hosts have given you. And that class teaches that to people and gives them those skills so that you can go out and do some live demo. And again, have fun with it and get people's attention and get them to think about using you as a resource. So I teach that course. And then the last one, because you said what I've really been doing a lot of lately is the AI. So
yeah.
AI is just so important now for our business. Artificial intelligence tools, large language models, generative AI models that make pictures, that make your voice, that do voiceovers, that do video. We are living in this amazing time where for a really small amount of money, you can get the amount of work done that it used to take a whole team of people to do for you. And as small business owners, that's an incredible thing to be able to do. I'll tell you. So I'll tell you. I just had teaching the class, a rotation of that class right now, and the big news this week is that Chat GPT just made agents available to their lower level subscribers. They had it previously at the $200 a month level. Well, most small business owners can't pay $200 a month, right? They just put it down. Now I have access to artificial intelligence agents at the $20 a month level, and I wanted to start testing it. So I went into the agent mode in Chat GPT and I said, please find all of the high school leadership organizations in my home state. Build me a list of those high schools that have chapters of those organizations, and find me the contact information of the headquarters of those organizations in my home state. Put it all in a spreadsheet for me. And I hit enter. And it worked for an hour on its own. And it went through the internet and it found everything I asked for. And so now I have a list of all of those leadership organizations that exist in the various high schools in my home state. And I can reach out to them and say, hey, would you like me to come do a show when you do your leadership conference? Because I know at those conferences, they usually do some form of entertainment. So now instead of me spending 5 hours searching for all of that, I didn't spend any. I spent 30 seconds typing that prompt into the agent function, and the agent went out and got me all of that information. Now I can do mailing and emailing and marketing to them, and I can get more work. That's a big deal. For $20 a month, now I can turn right around and do it again. I can say, tell me who all of the corporate um, like human resources are. Who's the human resources manager for every corporation in the state of New Hampshire? And it'll go find it, and I can build a list, and I can reach out to all those companies and say, hey, would you like me to do your holiday party? Like, there's so many things like this that AI can do now. And again, for $20 a month, you're going to save thousands of dollars, and you're going to save hundreds of hours each year not having to do that work yourself. It's very important for running our businesses. It's very important.
Thank you very much, Paul. I I do different interviews, and this was motivational, heart touching, especially about your journey. And I loved your response. Like, are you ready to restart your career again? And like, why not? And clarifying all the misconceptions, because this is what is my intention, that whoever is listening, like at least few people could come out of that misconception that hypnosis is not control, it's not about black magic, it's not harmful, or like these hypnotists are not the bad guys that are shown in the movies and all that stuff. So thanks a lot, and thank you for your time, and it was wonderful interviewing you, Paul.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you spending time with me and listening to me talk so much, but I had a lot of fun doing it. Thank you, Nizam.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. And friends, I will be sharing all the Paul's website and all the contact details. So whoever is interested in his AI training or demonstrations or any other certifications, you can find in the YouTube description, and will also be made available on the social media. So thank you.